Hello and welcome back to the TC Show. I'm Tom Christiano. Well, tonight we have a wonderful panel to talk about state and local issues. With me tonight we have Jim Lane. How are you, Jim?
I'm doing well, Tom. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for being here for your 11th time on the show, Jim. I think it is, right?
Yeah.
11th time, and as everyone knows, Jim is a former selectman in Chelmsford, and I think former all kinds of committees. I know on planning board as well, was it?
I was on planning board prior to Board of Selectmen.
Board of
right,
Selectmen, and a longtime town meeting representative, which you currently are, right?
Winding down now, so I have just a town meeting rep for Precinct 7, and I'm also on the Historic District Commission.
Well, that's still plenty, though, because you're a vice president in your company or something, right? And with like tons of employees under you, and so I don't know how you do it, Jim. Plus, you also have a wife and three beautiful children. Is it three?
Two
young ones,
I have
right,
three total.
Yeah,
One's grown and gone, and then I have the twins, and they're keeping us busy.
And it's great when I can't see you on the bike path and things, biking with your two younger children.
I passed John one day.
Did you really? Was he
well,
biking or
passes
walking?
Me.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being here, Jim.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. And we have my friend John Kurland with us tonight. How are you, John?
I'm well.
John, this is your 12th time in the show, right?
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
I can't count that high.
So as everyone knows, John is our town moderator, and has it been since this past April that you took over as a moderator in election?
This will be my first fall town meeting.
First fall town meeting. Nice. You already did a nice job at the spring town meeting.
Well, thank you.
It went very well. I don't think
the worst day was the day I had to recuse myself, so that was not bad, really.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because what did that have to do that you had to recuse yourself?
I owned a grinder pump.
Oh, right. It was a grinder pump issue, yeah, which was a very kind of controversial issue at that time. But it did pass, and we have the town now being responsible for the maintenance. Is that going okay, John, with the grinder pump maintenance, as far as you know?
I haven't heard complaints, so
good.
We'll get a report, I'm sure.
Yeah. And you're still also a town meeing representative, right, John?
No, I can't be because I'm moderator.
Right. But you worked for a very long time.
Yeah, a number of years.
And also a member of the Board of Selectmen, and also chairman for a while.
Right.
So
and FinCom, don't forget FinCom.
Oh, FinCom, yes.
That was my claim to fame.
Now you're kind of the appointing authority of the FinCom, right?
That's right.
So that's great, John.
Kathy's one of my appointments.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being here, John.
My pleasure.
And we have for the first time on the show, Ken Van Tassell. How are you, Ken?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here, Ken. You're running for state representative this year, right?
That's correct, yeah. And the 14th Middlesex, which includes precincts 1 and 9 in Chelmsford. So.
1 and 9 in Chelmsford, and then also what, Carlisle and some Concord?
Yep, Acton 1, 2, and 6, all of Concord and all of Carlisle.
That's quite a bit, huh?
Yeah, it is. It's quite a bit. Not too much Chelmsford, but I'm hoping to give Chelmsford a voice this November.
And we'll talk all about it later in the show, why you're running, what your top priorities are. But I spoke at your Eagle Scout ceremony.
Yes.
How many years ago was that?
That was in 2009, same year I graduated.
Is that
Chelmsford
5 years ago
High School.
already? Wow,
yeah.
Time flew by.
Actually, yeah, you were there, and Representative Atkins was also there. So
yeah, well, yeah.
Comes full circle, I guess, sometimes.
Yeah, that was great. So you and I are both Eagle Scouts, which is nice. And you're also an electrical engineer, I understand, right?
Yes.
With a master's degree?
Yeah, I recently graduated UMass Amherst.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you're working for,
program.
Could you say the company now?
Yeah, actually, I work for Bose Engineering in Framingham.
In Framingham, nice. But you live here in Chelmsford, in Precinct 9, I believe, right?
9.
I'm one of your town meeting reps, by the way.
You are, yes.
So don't forget to vote for me next April. Campaigning already, right?
It never stops.
20 years, I never missed a meeting as a town rep, so I was just lucky. It's not good. But anyway, it's good being a rep. I think there's a lot of important issues in front of the town.
For sure.
And not only town meeting rep, but state rep is very important. We'll talk all about these state issues later on in the show. So thanks for being here, Ken.
My pleasure.
And by the way, you're running on the Libertarian ticket,
correct,
right?
yes.
As a Libertarian this year. Great, thanks. And we have my good friend Kathy Duffett with us again. How are you, Kathy?
Great, Tom.
And do you know how many times it is that you're on? The 18th time you're on the show.
Yeah, I'm excited.
2 more, you hit this the big 20 threshold, where there's only 9 people who've been on 20 or more times. But
well, I can't wait to join the group.
it won't be long, Kathy, because I love having you on the show. And you know so much about what's going on in the town. You've had so many positions in town school committee, town meeting rep. Now you're on the finance committee.
Right.
So you're very knowledgeable, and you have a great laugh, which I always appreciate whenever I say something funny, which isn't too often. At least other people don't think it's funny. I try to be funny, but
I think you're quite amusing.
thank you.
Entertaining is
Yeah.
a better word.
So, Kathy, we'll talk a lot about what's going on in the town with the finance committee and the budget and all this kind of stuff. We have a lot of controversial issues going on in town
Some
right
serious
now.
problems right now.
Jeez. So who are we going to start with? I think if we'll start with Ken, okay, on the show?
Yeah.
Ken, could you let us know why you decided to run for state representative this year?
Sure, I'd love to. I'm basically running because I feel as if democracy in Massachusetts is at jeopardy or even in trouble. More than half of legislative races around the state are going unopposed. We have incumbents on from both major parties running and few people willing to put up a challenge. I think the one-party rule in Massachusetts has kind of showed us that a lot of times there isn't an accountable voice for budgetary issues and things like that, wasteful spending. I'd really like to break that. I think Libertarian Party is actually the way to do that because we are more fiscally responsible than Republicans, in my opinion, and more socially liberal than Democrats.
Yeah.
And I think the reason Republicans don't do well in Massachusetts is because we're not interested in a social policy from the 1950s. So I really think that having a Libertarian in there as the minor party is really the right way to go because we can agree on the social issues and we can pass meaningful legislation and we can have a real discussion and accountability when it comes to the financial issues.
Yeah, wonderful. And have you been a member of the Libertarian Party for long?
I haven't actually. Politics is something new to me. I remember graduating Chelmsford High School 2009. I had just missed the cutoff date to vote in the 2008 election. But I know a lot of my friends, that weren't interested. Younger people, even more and more, seem to be disengaged from the political process. So I was one of them, not really interested in it. And then when the 2012 election came along, I was like, oh, I gotta check out who's running.
Yes.
I gotta find out more about these candidates. And I was really dissatisfied with both presidential candidates.
Okay, yeah.
And that led me to dig deeper and find out about Gary Johnson, who was the Libertarian candidate for president. And I really, something
what
about his
state was he
message.
from?
He was the governor of New Mexico.
New Mexico,
Yeah, two-term
yeah.
governor of New Mexico.
Yeah, he was an interesting man, as I remember.
Absolutely.
Very, kind of, as you said, liberal on the social issues, and I guess fiscally conservative, right?
Yeah,
That's
he
what-
was actually known as Governor Veto in
in New Mexico?
New Mexico, yeah. He vetoed more bills than all the other 49 governors combined and had the fewest overturned by the state legislature there. So it was a state that was 2-1 Democrat. He ran as a Republican and won. And the people there loved him because he was, as I said, fiscally very responsible. But socially he understood that we want to let people do as they please as long as they're not hurting others.
Yeah, but then he ran as a Republican, but then he joined the Libertarian Party afterwards.
He tried to make some inroads running as a Republican. He kind of similar to the way Ron Paul did. He fizzled out of those debates and discussions in 2012. And then he decided to switch to the Libertarian ticket, and he's been kind of our spokesperson since then.
Oh, I see. Well, could you tell us what your top priorities are if you get elected, Ken?
Sure, yeah. My top
Thanks.
priorities would be to reduce the tax burden on the members of the Commonwealth, end wasteful spending. We had a big problem with the Health Connector website, $121 million spent there. There's $23 billion in off-budget spending that none of us get to find out how it's spent by the state legislature. Yeah. And so I'm really worried about the budgetary issues in the Commonwealth.
I see, wonderful. And the social, well, we'll talk about some of the social issues later on in the show.
Sure.
Medical marijuana and things like that. Thank you very much, Ken. By the way, just to let everyone know, Ken's opponent in this race, Corey Atkins, was on my show about a month ago in early September. And so
we actually had a debate last Sunday.
Oh, you
and
did?
it's actually available through Concord League of Women Voters website, and their cable access channel there. So
wonderful.
You could check that out whenever you'd like. Yeah.
So are you going to have other debates, or?
There's none scheduled now. I'd like to. But
how did that debate go?
I think it went well. It was actually we were the second panel, and actually Congresswoman Tsongas had a debate with her challenger.
Yes.
So we had a good audience there, which was nice.
Yeah. Congresswoman Tsongas' challenger is going to be on my next show, I believe it is. Yeah, the last one before the election. Okay. We're going to do a one-on-one interview.
Oh, it should be interesting.
I invited Congresswoman Tsongas, but she wasn't able to make that as well. So that's wonderful. I'm glad the debate went well. We'll have to catch it.
For a rookie, I thought I held my own at least.
Yeah. How long was it, the debate? About 30 minutes?
35 minutes, yeah.
Good.
Yeah, actually, the panel with Senator Barrett got canceled, so I think we got a little bit extra time.
It got canceled? That's too bad. Oh. Well, thanks, Ken. And John, I wonder if we could go to you next and ask you, is there anything new at this fall town meeting? Any new format items? Are you going to have 2 screens up or anything like some
We
have
actually are.
recommended?
We are going to have
Really?
2 screens.
Oh.
2 screens.
Good.
And I'd like to thank Chelm School Telemedia for assisting in this endeavor. There will be. We're still working on the logistics of where they're going to be, but the reality is that even with 2 screens, it's going to be difficult for certain people to see. So we're going to a white print on a black background, which hopefully will make it a little easier for people to see.
Wow.
But as far as the vote is concerned, it will still only be on the 1 screen. We can't can't do that yet.
that's fine.
But we are looking into some other innovations to try to enable the town meeting reps to be able to read relatively readily not only what's going to be on the screen, but any amendments to the warrant articles. So, but we couldn't do it this session. So hopefully in the spring we'll have something new.
Nice. And as far as the last session goes, in summary, how did you like being the town moderator? Were there any surprises? Were you glad you ran for town moderator?
Well, yeah, I'm pretty glad that I ran. I mean,
Yeah, good.
I'm more glad that I won.
Yeah. So it's going well. You're basically you were
it-
satisfied with everything.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to it than I had really understood. I mean, every time someone gets up to speak, I'm making notes about, Jim Lane got up and made a very good point about this, or Kathy Duffett got up there and said something brilliant, and I write all that stuff down. So that way I can keep track of what's said. I know that everything now is recorded, so back in the day before it was televised and retained, there were cases in which the moderator's notes were important for litigation purposes.
Wow.
So yeah, so
Nice.
it's fun.
Now, and this coming town meeting, there's some speculation that we might have one night on October 20th and then possibly take a break and come back in November for budgetary reasons. Could you expand on that at all, or is that true?
Well, I think that you indicated that we're going to be talking about what's going on with the school department budget.
Yeah, which we'll talk about next.
And of the warrant articles, Articles 2 through 10 are funding articles. I heard the town manager discussing before the finance committee the fact that he thinks it would be a prudent move to deal with the articles that we can deal with that don't require funding from free cash in order to and find out try to get a better handle on what's going on with the school department, and then deal with all the money issues, or at least the unusual, the free cash money issues. We've got one from the E-rate for the school, which is pretty routine. We've got one for the Board of Assessors, which basically is going to be paid out of their overlay. We probably can address those. We've got a few other warrant articles, but the ones that involve money and free cash and what we do with that, it makes a lot of sense that the town meeting reps decide how they want to approach that. I have no say in it other than to say it passes or it fails, but so we'll see what happens.
Sounds good, John. And
The Finance Committee did make a vote at the last meeting to... Okay.
are you going to talk about the school thing? Because I want to introduce it, and then we'll talk
Yeah.
about it, okay? So then, thank you, John. Next, we'll, excuse me, have an open discussion about a school department issue. There is at least, well, Kathy, why don't you say something? I'll have a drink of water.
I actually have a cough drop if you need one. So, as a member of the Finance Committee, I was just speaking to what John was saying about Paul came and made the suggestion that we have the second evening of town meeting. At the end of every town meeting, there is a vote to adjourn to the next meeting, and they say the date. And so it's still the same town meeting, it's just that the second session, it will be on a later date. And he proposed it for the very reason that John said, because at this point, the timing from when the news of the school problem happened and to when town meeting goes, there really isn't enough time to have a full assessment of the situation and be able to give people the information they need in
Yes.
order to vote.
I see, yeah.
In addition,
Yeah.
the one part of Well, if you'd like to introduce or
Yeah,
give an
the top-
overview
yeah.
of the problem, then we'll come back
Yeah,
to
and this-
my in addition.
Maybe we could just have an open discussion about this, and Kathy could mention the other things, because this is big in Chelmsford right now, this controversial issue. And I'll just read it because there's some names that I want to get right and numbers. There is at least a $480,000 Chelmsford school deficit that was recently discovered. There may be over $100,000 of unpaid invoices in addition to the $480,000. The school business manager, Kathy McWilliams, has been placed on paid administrative leave. To help close this budget deficit, 3 school administrators were let go. Valerie Diggs, the library coordinator and Chelmsford High School librarian, Jennifer Zurley, the English Language Arts Coordinator, and John Kittredge, a Science Coordinator. So what are your thoughts about this situation? So Kathy, did you want to continue with what you were saying
Well,
about that?
to the point of it's $114,000 worth of unpaid invoices that should have been paid in FY14 that have not been paid. They just came forward last week. So those items, so the vendors have not been paid. They total $114,000. Those items have to be brought forth to town meeting as late bills. And so, and there's a certain amount of time needed. So what would happen is that would require a special town meeting. So by postponing the second evening of town meeting, there could be a warrant article for unpaid bills for those $114,000.
I see, yeah.
So that makes the coordination so much more simple
Yes.
to,
yeah,
to address the entire issue on the second date.
Yes. So any other thoughts about this whole situation with the school department?
Well, I guess, it's a very serious problem that came forth because the auditor identified the issue.
Yeah.
And I think everybody all the details haven't been revealed yet. So I think that we should make sure we get the facts, the accurate number, and then go forth as a community and see how we can best address the issue.
Yes, yeah. Because there'll be a number of options, right? And
Right, Paul
that are-
elaborated about various sources of revenue, including would be the school does have revolving funds. There's there's a number of funds, but they've been saving money for full-day kindergarten, the tuition that they receive for having school choice. So they've been saving that money for some years in order to be able to do that. They may have to use some of that money to offset the problem.
yeah, yeah. Any other thoughts about this?
Well, I think it's important that people understand that there's a distinction as to the town financing and the school financing, that the town and the town meeting reps basically approve a budget, and a certain amount of funds goes to the school department, and the town manager and his finance team really have no control over it. It's almost like with the sewer enterprise fund that we had before when we were doing the sewer. And so that, the town manager and the town accountant and the town treasurer, they knew nothing about this until the audit came out. And even if they knew about it, they have no authority to correct the problem. The problem that I see, besides the fact that you cannot legally carry over bills from a prior fiscal year into the succeeding fiscal year, is that no one knew about it other than, at least from what I'm hearing, other than the business manager for the school department.
Yeah.
And I just don't know how that could have happened. I mean, there is a finance subcommittee of the school department, and they're supposed to be reviewing, so I'd be curious to hear what they have to say as to what information was provided to them.
Yes.
And of course, then the other issue is, was this just happened in fiscal 2014 and the prior year, or does it go back farther than that, and they've been sort of operating at a deficit and no one's known about it?
Yes.
Because the school department budget is not audited the way the town budget is. They do a spot audit, and the spot audit is what revealed the irregularities.
Really? Wow. So it wouldn't have shown up without the spot audit, possibly?
Right.
Who conducted the spot audit?
The town auditor, the auditor for the town.
That we pay, like not
Right.
an employee of the town.
Right.
But John Sousa's been doing a great job, though, I think, our town finance director, talking about this issue and talking about something needs to be done about it. He's very dismayed about it, that kind of thing.
Right.
I think he's been doing a great job.
Jim, I mean, we all know John, and
Yeah.
he is as even-keeled a guy as you can imagine.
Oh, yeah.
And to see him as animated as he was at the Finance Committee meeting shows you the passion that he has and how important this was
Yes.
to him, even though he has no direct authority over what happened.
Yes.
It's something that, as an accountant, he knows shouldn't have happened.
Yes.
And actually, he did work for the school department previously.
That's right.
He did.
At that time, there was, I believe he might have been the assistant business manager.
That's right, he was.
And so he's familiar with the budgeting process and the workflow process. And I think the school department, by state law, the school committee is in charge of their budget. You give them the money, the town says how much they appropriate, and then the school committee determines how they want it spent.
Yeah.
And so they have autonomy on their, I'm going to say 50 million, but
Yeah,
you know,
approximately, yeah.
approximately.
It's more than that, Kathy.
Yes, it is, but I'm just being approximate as a lover of education, and I'm so proud of how well-spoken you are coming from Chelmsford High.
Yes, yeah. I
Our
know.
tax dollars at work.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
hey, Jim came from Chelmsford High. He's pretty
That's
well
right, Jim.
He's the
I've
vice president
always
of the
been
company.
proud,
Yeah.
I've always been proud of Jim, but I just met you.
Yes, yeah. Mid-20s, right? He's running for state representative already.
Excellent. So they have autonomy, but we need to remember too that they are responsible. They have autonomy, but there is an interplay between the finances, and there are communications between, and so everybody needs to be working together as they solve this problem. And I think that will serve us all very well. It's a very serious problem. There's no doubt
Yes,
about
yeah.
it.
Definitely.
Jim, were you going to say something? Yeah.
You know, just serving with John and knowing John Sousa and Darlene, they do an exceptional job, and they're very proud of their accomplishments there, and they've always been right on the money as far as giving us budgets, giving us an accurate assessment of what's going on. So, and John is, as John Kurland noted, he's very low key, very even keel.
Yes.
For him to get so passionate about this and bring this up and continue to bring things to the forefront, it's obviously a very serious problem. John comes from the community. He's obviously very proud of what he's accomplished, but also of our schools and our budget and everything else. I would tell you this, I mean, having two kids in the middle school here, I hope people realize exactly how serious this is. Kathy alluded to it. Parents are pretty upset, and there's not a lot of information other than what you're reading in the newspapers. So hopefully once it gets all worked out and they get to the root cause of what happened and they get it all straightened out, the right course of action will be taken.
Yes.
Because I really think that's what people are looking for,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
what course of action is the school committee going to take
Yes.
to make sure that this never happens again, right?
Yes.
And also, what are the punishments for the crime, so to speak? It's probably the wrong terms to use, but are the right people being brought forward to, have accountability?
Yes.
And I think that's what I know that's what I would like to see from a taxpayer's perspective.
Yes.
If there was some wrongdoing there, obviously there's people that need to be accountable for that. Somebody should have been watching other than the one person that made the errors.
Yes.
So we'll see who that is as things start to come out.
Yes.
And hopefully, the school committee will do the right thing.
Yeah. I know Kathy McWilliams, I think it is, McWilliams, she wasn't at that last school committee meeting last week, and there was a very interesting public session which lasted a little over an hour, which I thought was very interesting. It would have been wonderful if we could hear from Kathy herself, just what happened. But she is now on paid administrative leave, and so I feel for her in a way. I mean, she must be so stressed out over all of this. but we'll have to see what ultimately comes of it, what caused it. Maybe it was something that just was beyond our control or something, I don't know, but we will find out. And speaking of the finance director, he is going to be on this show on November 6th. So we, as I mentioned, we have a congressional candidate on at the end of October, but then the next show after that will be November 6th with John Souza, the finance director, the chairperson of the school committee, Mike Rigney, a select woman, Pat Wojcik, and 2 other individuals will be on then. But I think that's going to be a very interesting show. If we don't hear a lot of details at the October 20th meeting, we might hear more then. But as I mentioned to Mike Rigney, for one thing, I commend the school committee for running that open session the way they did, because I personally been at controversial open sessions where there was a big clock at the meeting and people were limited to 3 minutes. This is in 2010. Jim, I don't know if you were there or not that night, but okay. John?
I wasn't there. I don't
Oh, you
think.
weren't there either? Okay.
Well, I was elected in April, but I'm trying to think of. when
Okay,
we
this
went.
was at the senior center, and there was like 200 or 300 people there.
Was this for the North Road?
North Road, yeah.
Well, yeah, I can understand why there was a time limit. I mean,
Well, no, well, I can't, but I think when people want to speak, I mean, you could politely ask them to cut down, but on this meeting on Monday, for example, at the school committee meeting, if you limit it to 3 minutes, everybody would have been cut
Right.
off because they all had more to say and it all was interesting. And let them express themselves, and they were so passionate.
Yep.
So, I mean, so I've seen, and I don't mean to be critical, but I don't think we should time people like in these very controversial issues and cut them off after 3 minutes. I don't think that gives them enough time to fully express themselves. There was Valerie Diggs' husband spoke, her son spoke very passionately for quite a while, and her daughter. And librarians, well-known librarians from, well-noted.
President of the National Library Association.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I commended Mike Rigney and the school committee because I think Mike was in charge of that meeting
I think he
for
did a good
allowing
job.
that, not cutting them off. But one thing I did question about later is why couldn't somebody address all these comments there? Not to argue, and I told him that, no, not to argue or anything, but just to let them know, okay, we hear this is where we're going to go next. I heard what your concerns are. And, or even explain, this is why we let these 3 people go. But they didn't. They went right on. First, there was a short break, and everybody was talking. But then they got together, and later on in the meeting, there were some comments, which I noted it in when I posted the YouTube video of the school committee meeting. I noted when the comments started made, like Frank Tiano, the superintendent, who was a very nice guy, by the way. And I can't wait to talk to him because there's a dichotomy here. There's one side that looks like these 3 individuals were treated very inhumanely in a way on that last day. But then I know Frank Tiano is a very humane, gentle person. So I can't wait to talk to him and find out what exactly happened on the last day. You all know what I'm talking about, right?
Sure. That's my main concern is with,
Yeah.
especially with me being out of Chelmsford High School recently. Actually,
Yeah.
I had the pleasure of knowing Valerie Diggs,
Yeah.
and I saw what she did with the Learning Commons was actually coming up when I was basically moving from freshman to senior year. I basically saw the transformation of that, and the library was really out of date, and she really brought that in. It was a resource for kids, not just for school, but there was a place to hang out. We had great programs. We had listening lunches where students would play music in the library, and she really helped bring that back. So I'm concerned when I hear some people saying things like, well, Chelmsford has too many coordinators anyway, these people don't do anything. Well, no, I know for a fact that they do, and
Yeah.
especially Valerie Diggs, personally, I know she did a great job. So that is my biggest concern, is that the person who might be most directly responsible is getting paid to not be at work, while 3 people that contribute very much to kids in Chelmsford.
I could maybe add a general perspective, having served on the school
Yeah.
committee for a
For
number
many-
of years.
Yes.
First of all, yes, Frank is a wonderful person, personal friend, but he is very ethical
Yeah.
and caring person.
Yes.
So, and he did express that evening how terrible this choice was, and he did express that there were mistakes, and he did say, I would say, I felt he was saying he was responsible for the handling of after the mistake happened. I'm going to call it an accounting mistake for lack of.
Okay, yeah.
I don't want to be sued. So
just say
today, but
accounting
anyway,
mistake.
so I think so. The thing about the paid leave, so you have to address the issue. So you can't address personnel issues in the public format. That's a contract issue. That's executive session. So whatever the legalities are for however they're going to address the the problem with the business manager, that is a contract issue.
Right.
So that has to be discussed privately.
Okay.
And then once the decision is made, anything that is finalized in executive session, then it can be revealed to the public about what has happened.
Yes.
Okay, so that's
Yeah.
so they're trying to do something about the situation.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's
And
also why we say
they're
we shouldn't-
hindered
Yeah.
by the confines of law and
That's
all
why
that.
know.
we also shouldn't be jumping to, like you said,
Right.
we have to know when everything comes out.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm,
And
I'm
then I
confident in the
think
town.
too-
I wish, though, somebody could have explained that last day, though, like Valerie Diggs and the others. But Valerie is, has been with the system for like 20
Yes.
years, very well respected. And from what I read, and what her son said, and her daughter and husband, she was escorted. She wasn't even able to talk to her other co-workers, and she escorted out on that last day, almost like well, I won't even use the terms that I'm thinking of. It's just terrible. You don't treat a human being that way.
Right.
So why couldn't somebody, and I don't care what the legalities are, and I don't think it would be illegal for the school committee to comment. Why, first of all, is this true? And I did talk to a school committee member, and he told me on the phone, he said, no, that isn't true. But then I asked him for details, and so far I haven't gotten the details,
Yeah.
what actually happened. So why can't people communicate, though? And in a general terms, saying this didn't happen, what happened was she was treated very well, we couldn't let her go back to her computer for some reason, I don't know, but people want to know these things, and that's why
I
they're so
agree. That could
upset.
be-
Valerie
that
was my
should be-
neighbor, too, a very wonderful person.
I know
So, yeah,
Valerie
very
and
well,
I
right?
admire her greatly, and to see what she has done at the library, the Learning Commons, would really almost make you cry.
Yeah, yeah.
For sure.
But aside from that, I'm saying, yeah, so I'm sure there are two sides to the story. I wasn't there. I don't know anything about the dismissal.
Right.
Anytime things happen too fast, you don't take a deep breath
Yeah.
and move forward from the situation,
Yes.
then I think that impedes the way you handle. So I think, everything just happened too fast.
Yeah, but one side has been getting out about the last day.
Right.
And I just think either Frank Tiano that night, right after everybody spoke, or Mike Rigney should have explained what happened on that last day. So all the viewers at home, like myself, could have listened and say, okay, this is what happened.
Yeah.
But why just leave one side out there hanging, especially as one school committee said, that's not true. I
Right.
mean, I don't understand it. It's been like
Yeah.
over 2 weeks now, but
Well,
Well,
there's
Tom,
going to be a
Tom,
tri-board meeting tonight. Want me to ask?
oh, is it time? Yeah, hopefully it'll come up. I mean, I
I'll
hope so.
say I have a question.
Yeah. Oh, you're going to be there?
Yes, because
Okay.
I'm
Oh,
on
the
the
Finance
Finance
Committee.
Committee.
Oh,
now.
right. You're one of the 3 boards.
Right.
Yeah, please. I mean, I don't know. Somebody should mention it. I don't know. Am I sounding strange here, though? But
No.
you want.
I think
Well-
that people are very upset about what happened,
Yeah.
the surprise fastness of it, and the seriousness of it. So, like Frank said, it's an onion that's being peeled back. But number one thing is a serious problem exists.
Yeah.
Could affect our students, and it could, we don't want that to happen. We are a community, and we want our students to be served well. We want our employees to be served well, and we want our taxpayers to get what they paid for.
Yes.
So
yes, thank you.
all
Yeah.
those things have to be tapped into.
The other thing, Tom, is that there are collective bargaining agreements, and it is possible that the dismissal of these 3 individuals without the appropriate notification under the collective bargaining agreement may give rise to some litigation or some other
Yes.
rights. And I would assume that the attorney for the school committee said,
Right.
don't say anything until we really
Yeah.
get a full handle on this.
That may have been what has happened, John, because you're right. Wasn't there some kind of law that they need at least 6 months' notice or something like that? Or
Well,
did I
w-
read
There's a contract.
some
There's
sort of
the contract that
states a
says
law
they have
notice?
to be notified by a
And
certain
there,
date.
Valerie, as you might have heard at that school committee meeting from her son, she was giving a briefing about 2015 items, right? An hour before they let her go. And they knew what was going to go on, apparently, and they just let her on like that, and then all of a sudden shock somebody like that? it just, something doesn't sound right here. It just,
Well,
it's
the-
very strange. But you're right, it probably has to do with some legalities. But sometimes, John, I know you're a lawyer and everything. By the way, Kurland and
Grossman.
if you ever need any legal
139
service,
Bill River Road
139
in Chown.
Right here in Chelm Street, yeah. So I'm sorry for not mentioning that before. So I understand that, but sometimes you got to just take a chance, and just even in speaking general terms, you know what I mean? And I don't think in a court of law you're going to be sued because you gave a reason why they were escorted out in a certain way. You know, I don't think it's going to make a hill of beans difference
Well.
in a court of law. You know, just
we've
that
seen,
little
we've
thing.
seen people in this town be sued for crazy stuff. So
That's
so
for sure.
don't underestimate the ability of people to find reasons to sue. But as a practical matter, we don't want our town to be sued. And the other problem, as I see it, is that in order to terminate those 3 positions, they had to do away with the job, which means that under the law, they can't refill those jobs for a year. So it's not like they can call everybody back and say, you know, well, we're going to make other cuts, or we're going to come up with the 160,000, I think was what it was, through school choice money or however they're going to do it, and we're going to bring you back, because now they can't unless they create a new position that is different than the positions that they had before.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Very important.
Yeah. So I think just to, not to simplify it, but it really is there's two main issues that need to have some answers brought forth.
Yeah.
One is the all-important human issue with Valerie and the other 2 administrators that got let go. Why did that happen, right? And why did it happen the way that it did?
Yes.
I'm sure eventually, when they can talk about it, they'll be able to release that. And then is it the financial piece, and hopefully that'll be straightened out when we have town meeting, and hopefully we never get in this type of mess again, because it's a it could be upwards of $1 million from what I'm hearing around town. I mean, by the time
I think that's another good reason to postpone the second night
Yeah.
of town meeting, to have a precise number, because it's like that telephone game when you were a kid, right? It's 500,000, it's 700,000, it's really $1 million, it's this, it's that. So.
But Kathy, when you hear 480, right, that's
Right.
released from the business manager, and then a week later you've got the finance director who's holding invoices that hadn't been paid, that were never brought to the table, that are worth another 100,000 plus,
Right.
Plus, yeah.
That puts skepticism in people's brains. It didn't do
Yes.
anybody any favors, especially the school administration. So.
Right.
I think there's a lot of people right now that I've talked to that are saying, what's the real number? I mean, is it 700? Is it $1 million? Is it $1.5 million? I mean,
Well,
what is the number?
that's why that's why an audit needs to be done, and I think that if they put the resources to it, they could have an audit completed before any extended town meeting in November. I mean, they could come up with, if not an exact to the penny number, they could come up pretty close and say, here's what we're really looking at.
Yes.
Well, what is exceptional is we don't even have the current auditor's report. So the current auditor, Mr. Powers or Mr. Sullivan.
Mr. Sullivan from
Mr.
Sullivan and Powers.
Mr. Sullivan, I mean, he came forth
Sullivan.
and spoke without actually having completed his work. I mean, he brought it to the attention of the people because it was so serious before he completed his report. Usually you get the report and that's when you get the bad news. But this was so serious an affair that he brought it to the attention right away. So he's going to continue his work, and then we'll get a finite report from him. So we have yet to even get their report.
Yes. Yeah.
So the $480,000 plus the 114.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Well, as you can see, this is a very important issue, so we spent a fair amount of time on it on the show, which I think was well worth it. I'm glad there was no timer. But I'm not big with those things. But I am big with, like, John, if you're moderating a meeting and somebody's going on and on, yes, then you gently and politely let them know you've had enough time. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So I believe in the kind of time limits, but one and more of you sense what's going on. You listen, and then you let people, you tell them you have to get off now. I think a meeting could be conducted that way. And thank God we don't have many of these time meetings. That's the only one I could think of back in 2010 that we had.
I was just going to say, did you think it was interesting that everybody who spoke on behalf of Valerie? I don't think one person brought up the financial issue.
Right.
Every single person there spoke about Valerie.
Yeah.
I found that
Well,
profound. about the
Although
woman.
at the finance committee meeting, they were talking about the numbers.
Right,
The
but
parents
that-
who came up
Right.
were talking about the numbers.
That's true.
Yeah.
But at the public input for the school committee, no one brought up the numbers.
Right.
Well, everybody.
Well, that's
more
because I
valid.
think they all realize that nobody knows what the numbers are yet.
Yeah, that's a possibility. And everybody, loves Valerie, and she's done such
Mm-hmm.
a great job. And she was due to retire 8 months later, right? When she, I think.
That's what people are
when
saying.
She
I-
could retire with dignity and respect. I don't understand. So anyway, not to
Right.
go on with that, but thank you. So we have the state election coming up. What's the date of the election?
November 4th.
4th.
Yeah.
That's a Tuesday,
Tuesday.
as it always is. Oh, by the way, we're taping a show on a Thursday that week. Now, as I mentioned, November 6th, because the following Tuesday is Veterans Day, November 11th. The studio will be closed then. So that's why for that particular day, we're taping a little earlier. So we have the election November 4th. Ken's going to be on the ballot, Ken Van Tassel. And we have 4 ballot questions. You want me to get them?
I just don't want to electrocute
4 ballot
us.
questions. And I thought if we could quickly discuss these because we don't have too much time now, but we have a little time.
Sure.
The first ballot question, basically, should we repeal the state's gas tax indexing adjustment for inflation every year? This is an open discussion. Any comments on that?
I'll start by saying, I think both sides kind of have this different views of this thing. The Republicans are saying we got to repeal it, the indexing, because we want to have accountability in the legislature. We want to have votes be taken so we know when it comes up. The Democrats are saying, well, no, we need it tied to inflation because, the cost of roads is tied to inflation inherently. It's going to cost more money to build roads. We need it tied to inflation. I think the real solution is really neither of these. I really think it should be a percentage-based tax like most taxes that we understand. People understand those pretty well. If there's a 5% tax on gasoline, like a sales tax on gasoline that's earmarked for roads and bridges, well, that's pretty simple. We know how that works. As inflation goes up, the 5% of your inflated dollars is 5%. And that's an easy way to keep track of it. I think applying the sales tax to it would actually be the most beneficial thing. So I'm not sure that this ballot question has a great yes or no answer. I think there's more to be done.
Actually, yeah, thank you, Ken. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the one I've been struggling the most with is that because, number one, it's a regressive tax. In other words, everybody needs to use gasoline to get work. Millionaires and people who are working, just trying to put bread on their table. But my bigger problem with this particular is not the indexing per se, is the fact that our state is notorious for passing laws that earmark money for a particular purpose, and then the money doesn't go there, like the lottery money. All the lottery money is supposed to go to the cities and towns. I do not have any confidence that this tax will actually go for working on the infrastructure, because something else will come up and they'll find another purpose for it because it's revenue. That's my biggest problem with it, is I just don't have confidence in the system.
Yeah. Well, maybe if Ken gets there, he'll straighten it out.
Well, yeah, see, I think
at the State House.
I think we need fewer of these specific taxes. I think the sales tax should just apply to gasoline, and the legislature should be able to know how much of their general fund needs to be spent on roads and bridges.
Yes.
It shouldn't be that hard.
Yeah.
It's an accountability and transparency issue, and it goes back to what I said about kind of a one-party system, is that no one wants to stand up and be accountable for that,
Yeah.
and I do. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm going to vote to repeal it because I feel like doesn't cost us anything to have a vote. So
Right.
why shouldn't people be able to vote at the State House and let everyone know how they voted?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with Kathy and John. I agree with John that I don't have any confidence in what we do with that tax money as well. And I think that by having a reoccurring vote and having it not tied to inflation, at least you have an opportunity to jar at your reps and tell them what you think. I just don't like a reoccurring tax that's tied to inflation, because you give up any voice. You're not, it's no longer going to hit the floor, right? At that point. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks. Well, question number 2 is, should we expand deposits, basically this is on containers of water and juice. Already we have it on, soda and beer, right? Should we add water and juice to that? And it's going to start with a 5 cent per container, and then after 5 years it's going to be reviewed, and it may be kind of indexed to inflation after that. So this is open discussion as well. Any comments? What do you think? Should we add deposits on water and juice?
Well, I'll start. I didn't like the ads against it, only because they say that if this is passed and the bottles and cans aren't returned, the excess money that is generated goes to politicians, and that's not true. It doesn't go to the politicians. It goes into the state general fund. My sense is, and putting on my FinCom hat and my former selectman hat, is the town gets money for the more stuff they recycle. And if we recycle more and more plastics, which we've been doing, that generates a little bit of money for the town. And I would just as soon do it that way than to have to carry back my Tropicana, containers, as well as my, Dasani containers or whatever else, my wife buys me to drink out, whatever it may be.
Yep. So you would not add the deposits on water and juice, yeah?
No.
And I'm with you, John. But any other comments on
I would
this?
vote no. I'm voting no for two reasons. One being that I think we should actually get rid of the bottle bill entirely. As you see, with $34 million went to the general fund last year from unclaimed deposits, and it's really essentially it's a tax on people who decide to use town recycling instead of drudge back to the store and return them. So it's almost, you get penalized, well, not penalized, you pay your taxes to have the town recycling, and then you also are paying this 5 cents on top that goes to the general fund. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that this proposal gives executive power to a certain office. It gives them the ability to adjust the deposit amount without any legislative action. And I think that's a scary prospect. I think if you want to change the bottle deposit number, that really needs to come from the legislature and be held accountable. So that's why.
You're only 26 years old?
23.
23! Oh my God. Boy, you're keeping up with all this stuff, doing it, and very articulate too. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Eagle
Jumps
Scout
high.
paid off, jumps it high, yes. Not to interrupt you, but any other comments about this? And
I'm going to vote. I'm indecisive, but I think
Oh.
you guys have just decided me. I'm going to vote the same as you three. No.
Yep. No deposits on the water and the juice, yeah?
Yeah, I'm happy with the way it is as well.
Yeah. And me too, because as John mentioned, for one, I think a lot of people recycle as it is, and I know, I bike a lot, as you all know, in eastern Massachusetts. I don't see water bottles or juice bottles strewn all over. If I did, that would be very different. So I also think it would be another incentive for people to go to New Hampshire, like I do, and do shopping. But I live pretty close by, but it'd be a greater incentive for people even further south to travel to New Hampshire, where they have no taxes, not only on water and juice, but on beer and the soda as well. So I think there's all these incentives you have to look at. And who gets hurt most with these little 5 cents? The people who can least afford it. Look at every dollar that they pay for a case of water. To them, it means a lot. So I'm going to vote no on this. I don't want to add deposits on that. Plus, I think water is very healthy. We're supposed to drink water and juice, maybe 8 cups or glasses a day. Of these kinds of things are healthy for us. We want an incentive to keep the prices down, which is another reason for me to vote no. So hopefully that'll be the way it goes. Basically, question number 3, a yes vote would prohibit casinos and slot machines in Massachusetts. Should we prohibit casinos in Massachusetts? This is open as well.
You want me to start again?
Hey, wait a minute. I'll start.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
People might be surprised, but bring the casinos on. I feel like it's going to have jobs. It's going to help the economy, and I think they'll probably do something for the associated social ill effects. So bring on the casinos.
Okay, yeah.
Play my number 18.
Yeah. Okay. And which, as everyone knows, the law is already passed. This is to question to possibly repeal it. According to the early polls, it looks like it's not going to be repealed from what I've seen. But we'll see. Anyway, it's going to be on the ballot. So any other thoughts about the casinos?
I agree. Springfield has been advertising very heavily that they need the jobs, they need the attraction to bring the money and the tourism into their community. And to be honest with you, we've seen so many people from Massachusetts going south of the border to spend their money. And there are restaurants down there, there's other entertainment. I would just as soon have that money coming into the Commonwealth and have people traveling a little less far. And I think they're doing it right, having one in the Springfield area, one near Boston, one on the South Shore type of thing. So it's not like Atlantic City where you've got a whole row of casinos and some of them start going out of business because there's all this competition right next door.
That's true, yes. Yeah.
For me, I mean, it's from my business perspective, I mean, a big part of what we do is mechanical construction. It would mean a huge amount of jobs in our industry. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
I also look at, the figures that I've heard. Massachusetts money, over $400 million a year, goes down to Connecticut. That's amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
if you can keep that here in Massachusetts, it's going to feed other businesses,
Yeah.
it's going to create jobs, and it's going to be great for our economy. So it'll be another means
Yeah.
of income that could come back to the local communities and cities and towns
Yeah.
that could help with education, with roads and grounds, the stuff that we've talked about tonight.
Okay,
Right.
Thank you. Thanks.
I will be voting no for the repeal. I know that there will be a lot of jobs, and I think a lot of people think there's going to be a lot of low-paying jobs, but I think casinos bring jobs in all different skill levels.
Yeah.
There's, the high-skilled dealers, there's medium-skilled, restaurant. I have a higher-end restaurants than there's the regular restaurants, things like that. So I think it brings a lot of good. And being a libertarian, I'm not one for government to say, to ban things that are considered vices. I think gambling addiction is a real thing,
Yeah.
and it's
Oh,
an
yeah.
important thing, but people need help. Just the way, alcohol prohibition wasn't the right thing to do. It was educating people on alcohol abuse.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes with gambling. I think people have the right to
Yeah.
gamble if they choose for
Yeah.
entertainment purposes.
Yeah,
And I think it'll be good for Massachusetts.
Thank you. 23 years old. Wow. I don't think I've ever. Well, oh yes, Tom Golden. He was first elected
He
to
was-
the state
yeah.
at 23 years old. Because every time he comes on, I always remember, And he's been serving now 20 years now. Tom
Is that
Golden.
right?
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Serving well.
Serving very well, doing a great job. Yeah. So thank you. Thanks, everyone. Question number 4. Looks like we're going to go through them and hopefully the other issues too,
Sure.
like medical marijuana and all that kind of thing. Question 4. Basically, a yes vote would allow workers to earn up to 40 hours of sick time a year to take care of their own health or a family member's health. Workers would earn 1 hour of sick time for every 30 hours worked. So any thoughts on this? Who wants to start on this one?
I'll start.
Question 4.
So I'll be voting against this as well. I think one of the earliest things my dad taught me about when I was looking for jobs is that when you're looking at a job and you get an offer, it's the total compensation package that matters, because the
Yeah.
business pays a certain cost per employee. It's not just your wages. And it's the same line of reasoning with the minimum wage, which I think we'll talk about if we get to it. But when you force, say, a sick time earning for an employer, the employer cost per employee is going to go up. So they have to do one of a few things. They either have to cut employees, cut wages, cut other benefits, things of that nature. The same reasons why if the minimum wage goes up, then we have to cut other compensation, because the business can't just absorb, unless they have a really good, they really want to keep those employees and they really have the profit margin to do so. Businesses can't afford an overnight increase in their cost of operation. So I'll be voting no on that.
I see. Yeah, question 4.
Well, I disagree. I think, first of all, I'm in favor of the minimum rate, minimum wage going up. The United States, we work more hours than any other nation, any other industrialized nation. Most of the other industrialized nations, they have at least a month off for their employees and things like that. If someone has a devastating illness, I want, and it happens to me, now I've got my own business, but let's say that I work for someone else. If I need to take time off to either make myself well or to attend to ill family members, I want to make sure that that job is waiting for me if I'm going to be gone for a few weeks, and that they're not going to just do away with it. And I'm going to need the money to survive.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to need the money to pay my mortgage or to live. And the burden, I don't think, is that substantial to most businesses, okay? Most businesses won't need to have people taking a month off or whatever
Yeah.
because of medical issues.
Yeah.
But it's a nice safety net for
Yeah.
people to have.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, I would take the opposite side from John. I think
not
that
surprised.
being a corporate executive, right? There's my customers are billed based on an hourly rate in many cases, unless it's a contract job, right? So when I have a vacancy, first of all, employees are protected by what they call Family Medical Leave Act, so that their job wouldn't be there for them because they take a month off for a family illness is, in my opinion, not a true statement, because they're protected by FMLA at this point.
Or it would be illegal if that happened.
Right. Yeah, otherwise the company would be liable.
But Jim,
On
I've seen it happen at a major hospital in the Boston area where people were let go because they were sick, and the jobs weren't waiting for them when they came back.
Well,
So, and because then you have to sue.
Right.
You have to sue to
Right.
enforce it.
Right.
Who can afford it?
there's arguments back and forth. Obviously, I'm going to take the other position. I think Ken hit on a very good point. Total compensation, sick time, vacation time, benefits, right? Our CEO sends out a statement every year to all of the employees, which basically shows not only their salary, but also what they pay for their benefits, right? In our case, it's 25%, and what the company pays for benefits, what the company matches in 401k, and if the company achieves more than what their scheduled profitability is to the shareholders, they even give an extra incentive to the employees. All of that gets brought in by columns, and it actually shows your total compensation between what the company pays and what the employees actually paying, right?
Yes.
Or receiving.
Yeah.
And it's really phenomenal when you start to add all those columns up to what a company is responsible for when they start to put these benefit programs together. So, we're talking about right now in our company about reducing sick time and taking vacation and sick and combining it to PTO. And instead of somebody accruing at 4 weeks vacation, they would get 5 weeks of PTO, and they would be able to take it, whether it's vacation or whether it's sick. It's all the same bucket, right?
Yeah.
And they would
personal time off.
Yeah, it's personal time off, right? And that way they would have the flexibility. Now there's arguments to that. It could be, you're encouraging people to take sick time that they might not take, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think by giving, carte blanche 40 hours of sick time it's the right answer. I really don't.
Thank you.
I'm totally indecisive.
Yeah. Well, we only have a couple of minutes left. Just quickly on the minimum wage, it's going to go up to $9 an hour in January 1st, what's in about 2 or 3 months. For tipped employees, it's going to go all the way from $2.63 to $3 an hour, which I'm very disappointed about. These poor waiters and waitresses, it's terrible. And I think that should go up much higher than that. But you probably disagree, Ken, with the minimum wage, right?
I do, yeah, and I think those tip waiters probably take home more money than a lot of hourly
But
wages.
still,
my first job was at Market Basket in Westford, actually. So I worked there started when I was 15 up through. I worked there summers between colleges, and I never expected to get more than $7 an hour, whatever it was at the time. And I certainly didn't expect earned sick time because I was a part-time employee at Market Basket. And we have to remember that these things especially affect a very small percentage of jobs out there. Most employers, skill-based jobs do have compensation packages. I wouldn't worry too much about the tipped servers, because I have a few friends who did those kind of jobs, and they make a pretty good amount of money. It's the thing with the culture that everyone knows that they're going to tip a certain amount. So in that opinion, it's a little strange. Maybe it should be they get the same minimum wage, and people really do tip based on service and not because they have to.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, but I am against the minimum wage increase.
Yeah, thank you.
I
Quickly,
disagree, because first of all, the income inequality is the greatest now than it's ever been in the United States. And if we increase the minimum wage, you're going to have the lower end people, the people who are struggling to get by, be able to afford an apartment, be able to afford a car, be able to afford to buy groceries. And when they've got the spending money, that's what really drives the economy. Our economy grew the most after World War II and into the early mid-60s because we had money, and the middle class was doing a lot better than they're doing now.
Thank you. Well, you all did a great job on the show today, that's for sure. I wish we had more time because we have many more topics, and I couldn't find a more articulate and knowledgeable and well-spoken group of panelists, in my opinion. And Election Day is what, November 4th? Ken Van Tassell will be on the ballot as a state rep. Thanks for being here. Ken,
Thank
first
you.
time on the show.
Yes.
You did a great job.
I hope so.
23 years old, not nervous at all or anything?
Oh, definitely nervous, but a little nervous is good.
Yeah, right. Jim, another great job. Thank you very much, Jim.
Thanks for having me.
It's always great to see you.
Same here.
Thank you, John. Another
My
great
pleasure,
job.
Tom.
It's great to have you on the show. Kathy, 18 times. 2 more, you at the big 2-0. Times on the
Lucky,
show, not 20 years old.
Kathy's going to come to the next 2 meetings, whether she's invited to.
The next 2 shows, yeah. Thank you. And thanks to this wonderful camera crew, Phil and Azora and Larry, and our great director of the show, Pete Padula, hopefully our future Chelmsford Telemedia director, Pete Padula. If you have any comments on the show, please send me an email at tcristiano@comcast.net. Also, please join the group Chelmsford Reps and Residents to know on Facebook to know all about what's going on in Chelmsford. Thank you for watching the show. Ciao. Are you in that group?